Good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas O'Keefe. I'm the president of the National Treasury Employees Union, Chapter 138 here at the Port, representing Customs and Border Protection employees. It is my honor and distinct privilege to now introduce to you the Port Director of the Port of Champlain, Paul Stephen Mungillo.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Thomas. I want to first of all say I want to thank the National Treasury Employees Union and the chapter president, Thomas O'Keefe, for help sponsoring this event with the carnations, the wreath, coffee, and things. I think we owe Thomas and the NTU a round of applause. Uniformed officers, ladies and gentlemen, members of the organization's fellow state, federal, state, law enforcement organizations, and our Canadian counterparts, CBSA and RCMP, for attending today. Today, we honor those who tragically were victims of the attacks and those who were responders. Not just responders on that day, but those of you who continue to respond every day by working each and every day, 24/7, to keep bad people and bad things from harming our country. I think it's, as we honor today the 10th anniversary of the tragic events of 9/11, it's affected each and every one of us in many different ways. When you look at the Port of Champlain, we have, just from the uniform side, the frontline officers, about a dozen that were actually working, that are still here at the port, that were working that day. And you can see from the growth that we've had, there are many people that weren't here on that tragic day. But nonetheless, it's affected us all. We have employees that were affected. We all may know of someone that we're in the towers, we're at the Pentagon, we're on the aircrafts. So it's a very solemn day. I wanted to take a minute and just, because the events on September 12th, the very next day, Customs and Border Protection, Agricultural, Immigration Naturalization Service, our missions changed. It changed for the better. We're all one today. And there are still struggles that we go through each and every day to get us to where we want to be. It has been just 10 years since that day, but we continue to do that each and every day. But when you look at our mission statement, I'm going to take a moment and read it to remind all of us, this is why that happened. This is why we are where we are today. We are the guardians of our nation's borders. We are America's front line. We safeguard the American homeland at and beyond our borders. We protect the American public against terrorists and instruments of terror. We steadfastly enforce the laws of the United States while fostering our nation's economic security through lawful international trade and travel. We serve the American public with vigilance, integrity, and professionalism. And if you think about that for a moment, each and every day, that truck, that vehicle, that individual, that's our most important examination of the day, is what's there in front of us. And we have to stay focused, and it's hard to say, it's been 10 years since the events of 9/11, to remain vigilant. But we have to be right every single time, every single day, every single shift. We have no margin for error, and that's tough. We understand that. As the area port director, I can tell you I appreciate the efforts that are done each and every day. And we do a lot of outstanding things. If you think back over these last 10 years of the accomplishments and the things that have happened right here within our ports, they are very significant. And that's a reflection of the work that uniformed and non-uniformed do each and every day. And take it from me that I do appreciate it, and I want you to know that. Thomas and I meet very regularly, and we talk about this. There are things that we're going to try to do in the future, because we can't make CBP the best, but what we can do is make our area the best it can be. And today, as we honor those that have fallen before us, nearly 3,000 that day, whether in the Pentagon, whether at the World Trade Center, whether in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. You know, let's reflect and think of the sacrifices that they made. And with that, I say thank you. I'd like this time to reintroduce the Chapter 138 President, Thomas O'Keefe.
I just want to build on something that Paul said. First of all, I just saw our Canadian counterparts. Welcome. Anybody that came in late, please see me. I have what's called a challenge coin. It's a commemorative challenge coin. And the reason I'm telling you this is if you look on the coin carefully, there's the number 93. And the reason for that is the World Trade Center was first bombed in 93. It wasn't just about 10 years ago. The men and women that I am proud to represent here, the men and women in uniform, be it the Border Patrol, RCMP, Canada Customs, FDA, whatever the case may be, I thank you for your service. I thank your families for supporting you being here today. That is outstanding. It is not easy work we do, but like the coin says, we will never forget, ever, ever forget. It's not just about September 11th, 2001. It's about always, okay? We do this day in, day out. And having said that, I would like to read a speech, and it is a timeless speech as far as I'm concerned, and you'll know it when you hear it. When it was first read, the reader stepped off the stage and said, "That went off like a wet blanket." And it turned out to be one of the greatest speeches ever. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth onto this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in this great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so nobly advanced. It is rather for us, it is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion, that the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we are here highly resolved, that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. We will not go quietly. I thank you for being here. We will fight this war until it's over. I want to thank all the firemen that are here. Over 300 fire and police and EMS personnel died on September 11th. I want to thank you all for being here. We're now going to, I'm going to introduce to you Deacon Noel Heiner, and he's going to give us an invocation, and we will lay the wreath after his invocation. Deacon Heiner.
Almighty God, the 9/11 tragedy has been indelibly inscribed in our memories. We shed our tears in the common bond of grief for those we loved and lost. We journeyed through a dark valley, but your light has led us to a place of hope. You have turned our grief into determination. We are resolved to do what is good, right, and just. Help us to remember what it means to be Americans, a people endowed with abundant blessings. Help us to cherish the freedoms we enjoy, and inspire us to stand with courage, united as one nation in the midst of adversity. God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spared may live so that the lives lost may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console us, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the heart of all. Lord, please hear this prayer for our nation. Amen.
Honor guard, Ted. Hup! Freeze, Dad. Oh! Order! Oh! Hooray! Ready!
Please join us all now in a moment of silence. Thank you.
We are a little bit ahead of pace.
Hard to believe.
People that like to talk like Thomas and I. But we're about 14, 15 minutes away from the flyover. At that point, we're going to have a 21-gun salute to honor the brethren that perished on that day. We'll also have taps, and we'll be able to, for those, everyone else in our nation, be able to lay on the flagpole and walk through that. And at that point, we'll conclude our program for this morning. I might add, that, we talk about here in the North Country, such a beautiful day it is today, how the events of 9/11 affect us. But I can tell you that the things that go on here within our area port and across the nation with CBP, terrorism is not going away. It's in the forefront each and every day. That's our number one priority amongst the narcotics, the trade, and a host of other things that we do. But you don't have to think back too far to just Christmas Day several years ago with the Detroit bomber. Last summer in Times Square, the attempted improvised device. Just earlier this year in the spring, we had the synagogue bombers that were arrested. These things, Portland, Oregon, Christmas of last year, with the lighting of the Christmas tree and things. These things are in the news, and it's fortunate that we can knock on wood because of efforts that we do each and every day. It does make a difference. And the things that our employees do make a difference here each and every day. And for those family members, I want to say thank you for your supporting of them. I know it's hard. I know they miss holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, children's school, you name the event, plays, recitals, because we've all been there, we all go through it, and we'll continue to do it. But it's the sacrifices that your spouses are making each and every day that make the things that we want to do every day possible. So for that, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, and to the firemen, to the law officers, to our law enforcement brethren. You know, we have a very good working relationship up here, and without that cooperation, a lot of things that we do wouldn't seem so seamless. So I'd like to give you all a round of applause for me, so thank you very much.
Probably the most dangerous place today is between you, the Paul Ride, and the microphone. I'd also like to thank our brothers and sisters who are veterans, including Paul, all the veterans who have served this country. To me, there is no nobler calling than to serve one's country, and we thank you, the Legion, for being here, and we thank you, gentlemen, for your service. Thank you very much. The watch plane never flies.
Things got started rather quickly this morning. This is Calvin Castine at the Champlain border crossing. It's September 11th, 2011. So the ceremony remembering the events that took place 10 years ago. We're awaiting for the 9:03 flyover. And following the events, we will talk to one or two of the people involved here. Everyone, of course, remembers where they were and what they were doing 10 years ago when they heard about this. Yeah, we kind of forget in the East Coast that the people on the West Coast, many of them woke up to the news. It started approximately at 8:45, which would be 5:45 in the Pacific time zone.
I hear helicopters on the horizon, so a minute or two out, so just ask if y'all be prepared for the flyover.
I hear the chopper coming closer. Catching a flyby on camera is also a challenge. We're never quite sure exactly where the plane is going to appear. As we're taping this on Sunday, the 11th of September. Yesterday, on the Battle of Plattsburgh parade, there was a flyover and a Homeland Security helicopter announced its arrival, hovering over the crowd, and suddenly came the jet flyover. Here's the helicopter.
Honor guard, we honor our fallen brethren.
Order, out! Flags fire. 4, out! Ready, out! 8, fire! 8, fire! 8,
walk up and lay your flowers.
Thank you. This concludes today's ceremony.
First one, hut.
Everyone attending was offered a carnation. We've been told that they've had a small ceremony every year since 2002, the first anniversary. We appreciate them including us in the invitation list. And a personal call from Paul Mangilo and also from Vinny Nigro, who put the program together. Temperature about 60 degrees on this Sunday morning.
First one, parade, left. First one, kid, hut. Follow.
American Legion Post 912. Always do a fine job. Fire department from Champlain was here. Well, I think I'll take a moment right now to read the list of the groups that were listed in the program as taking part in here as honored guests, as the last fire department truck is getting ready to move out. American Legion Post 912, of course that's from Rouse's Point. Canadian Border Services Agency, Champlain Fire Department, Champlain and Rouse's Point Police, Clinton County Sheriff's Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI obviously, Fish and Wildlife Service, Food and Drug Administration, General Services Administration, commonly referred to as GSA, Homeland Security Investigations, New York State Police, Office of Air and Marine, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, U.S. Border Patrol, U.S. Attorney's Office, NDNY, and U.S. Department of Agriculture. They were all honored guests here on this September 11th program.
How was that? Good?
You did a great job, Paul, and I want to congratulate you on putting this event on. Vinny Nigro also was on the planning committee, was he? Vinny called me shortly after you did, so I appreciate you inviting us to this. This is something that takes place every year?
It's something that this has been, unfortunately, the 10th anniversary of the events of 9/11, and each year we've had a wreath laying ceremony, the flower. It's also not only Supervisor Nigro, but also the National Treasury Employees Union and Thomas O'Keefe, the president, something that we do collaboratively, and it's a good thing. As you can see from the turnout, this year being it's on a Sunday, I even had families involved. We like that we have our Canadian counterparts, both CBSA and RCMP, able to attend, the federal, state, and local, U.S. Border Patrol, County Sheriff, State Police, the ambulance and fire from the community. So it's a community event just held here at the port.
So this is one of the larger ones that you've had because it's the 10th anniversary as far as attendance and so on?
Yes, it was a very good turnout today. As you can see, it's a beautiful day, cloudless day. Again, we get the Air and Marine helps out with the flyover. This year we had the American Legions, we had the TAPS, we had the 21-gun salute to honor our fallen brethren. So a lot more participation, but it's something that we need to remind ourselves each and every day. This is what we do, and this is why we've done it, the sacrifices that have been made before us.
And besides planning for this event, this has probably been, I would assume, a very busy time for you guys, because the fear is that something will happen today or might happen today, and you've got to be extra. Not that you're not already at 100, you got to go be like Pete Rose, 110%.
That's true. We have to be vigilant each and every day. As I mentioned earlier, we have the opportunity each and every day. We have to be 100% right. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the work that we do. Whereas terrorists, they only have to be right once. And it's a daunting task. I mean, we sit in a corridor that's, Montreal just 45 minutes to our north, New York City 5 hours to our south, but if you consider the whole eastern seaboard from Boston to Washington, D.C., that's all within a day's drive, and you can cross right here at the Port of Entries, and you have the whole eastern seaboard covered. So you're right, this week in particular, yeah, we've had to be vigilant again, because you don't know. You have to, as I mentioned, each and every day, that inspection, that vehicle, that bus, that train, that truck, that airplane, that boat, that vessel is your most important examination at that time.
Now, your area of coverage personally, I know that you're here at the Champlain Port of Entry, but you're also in charge of other ports in the area, aren't you?
Yes, my area of responsibility goes from Rouse. It covers 10 land border ports of entry of the 17 on the northern border of New York. They go from Rouse's Point all the way to Fort Covington. And also under my area of responsibility is the airport and seaport in Albany, which is about 175 miles to our south as we're standing here today. So it is a broad area, but again, we have a lot of dedicated people. We have the staff and the resources to do what we need each and every day. And I might add, several of those ports of entry, Cannons Corners and Churubusco, are getting brand new facilities to modernize and to help the employees do their jobs more efficiently with the modern facilities, as you see here at the Port of Champlain.
Yes, because we've followed the development here very closely because it's right here in my backyard, but a lot of effort and thought went into redeveloping here. Now, so Churubusco will be staying open?
Churubusco is staying open, although our counterparts, CBSA, have closed their port going north. But their efforts, much higher levels than mine in the political area, to try to, have that port open. They're looking at different types of programs and different things. But again, that's the Canadian government, CBSA, in conjunction with the U.S. government, are looking for viable solutions for that.
Okay. As I mentioned on camera a little while ago, we in the East Coast tend to forget that not everybody was awake on at 8:45 on that September 11th, 2001. If you look back to the west of here, the East Coast, the West Coast, it's 5:45 in the morning. Now, you were what, in the Central Time Zone at the time? Where were you?
I was actually stationed in the Port of Philadelphia.
Okay, Eastern Time.
So I was on the Eastern Time Zone. I actually had an afternoon shift that day, working at 1400, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. As I recall that day, it was, I was on the internet, and there was a caption that had a picture of the World Trade Center and talked about a small aircraft had crashed into it, and just moved on about my day. As I left for work, you turn on the radio, and they're talking about the World Trade Center towers had collapsed and we were under attack, and I turned right around on the street, went right back home, turned on the TVs, I kind of got in tuned, saw what was happening, and went to work. And as I mentioned, our job changed the very next day. Our mission changed. We were now, terrorists was our first and foremost, as historically for 200 plus years had been narcotics, collecting taxes, a host of other trade issues that we were always, and we still do that today. That hasn't changed. It's just that, keeping bad things and bad people out of the U.S. Also, on one of the airplanes, unbeknownst to me at the time, I had a childhood friend that played sports with, knew his family well, been in his home many times, was on one of the planes that went in the World Trade Center. And we had a memorial a couple of days shortly after that, in early November, late October. And I told his family I rededicated, my career, and have done a lot of things since then. But it's in honor of Pat's, in Pat's memory. I'm able to do the long hours and the different things because I remember, the sacrifices that were made for us, and we have to carry that on.
Yeah, and you're in an area here where I remember a few years back now when the Customs celebrated their 200th anniversary, and I guess the saying was at that time, revenue must be had. But that's pretty much how Border Protection started, was the revenue part. You needed, and of course, this area here was one of the early land ports, I would imagine, because most of the time you think of revenue coming in from the seas, and but here all of a sudden we had Canadians right next to us. And
oh, absolutely. And when you think of the days, when the U.S. Customs Service was first started back in 1789, which was shortly after the birth of our nation, the primarily entry into the United States was by sea. And when you look at a lot of the laws, a lot of the different regulations, rules, directives and things was more sea-based, and you kind of see that in some of the laws, although they've been changed over the years to add all modes of transportation. But you're right, it is, and when you have a land border such as here, it is protecting the revenue. For many years, the agency would collect more revenue than it would for what the employees made and their salaries and things. That's been surpassed by the Internal Revenue Service, a few years back. But it's still, even when you think of the free trades and all the trade agreements we have around the world, the NAFTA, North American Free Trade, again, around the world, we still collect, just right here in a year's time, we're collecting, $10 billion, in a year. So it's quite significant, the amounts of monies that you're getting.
So in addition to protecting our lives, you're also generating a lot of revenue here at
at the border crossings.
Right, because we're we're one of the busier ones, the 5th largest on the northern border as far as trade coming in, and again, that's a big area because you want to protect the revenue. You know, whether you're countervailing duties, anti-dumping, claiming NAFTA and it's not NAFTA, and then all the legitimate things that are coming in because of NAFTA. You know, we don't want to stand in the way of that. You know, the trade. Because each day, each truck that would be delayed, it costs the government revenues, and it costs the manufacturer. It goes all the way back to the importer, to the manufacturer. So we don't want to stand in that way, but at the same time, we want to protect the revenues as well. And we do a very good job of that. The facility helps in that we don't have those long backups here at the port. So that, again, it's all attributed to this beautiful facility that we have.
I know we won't keep you too long here because you've got people to talk to and see over there, but at one time customs and immigration were pretty segregated. Are they pretty much commingled now? Is it one entity? Or?
It's been one entity. In 2003, when the Department of Homeland Security was formulated, it brought in 22 separate agencies into the one department, unheard of in the history prior to that. And with that, within Customs and Border Protection, you know, us here along the border, is the field operations. We brought the 3 entities, what was the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the Agricultural, United States Department of Agriculture, along with United States Customs Service, and we made it one. It hasn't been easy. Sure, I wouldn't be truthful if I said we don't still have struggles in maintaining it and putting the one face at the border. But when you look at the totality of where we were to where we are today, we're leaps and bounds, but we still have a ways to go. And we do that each and every day, that integration, so that, you know, it is a seamless process as those are entering the United States here on the northern border.
Okay, well, we appreciate the revenue that you generate, but we certainly appreciate even more the safety that you provide us by being here and doing your job.
And it's a pleasure of ours. Believe me, we're honored to do it each and every day. And like I say, we have a very dedicated staff. They know their duties and responsibilities, and you know, we're trying to be the premier law enforcement agency around the world. We're professional. Doesn't mean that we don't stub our toes now and then, but we're human. But at the same time, we want to have a humanity to when people coming in. We want the legitimate trade and travelers to enter the United States seamless. There have been many changes, many programs added. We're just in crossing the border for, you know, using the WHITI, the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, having the documents, the U.S. passport cards, Nexus entry, fast cards, to help facilitate that entry so you don't spend the long lines. And we just completed another summer season, what I call the 100 days of summer, Memorial Day to Labor Day. It probably was a little bit busier than years past. However, it seemed seamless. The waits weren't as bad as they've been in the past. We look at our operations every day to improve how we can facilitate the legitimate trade and travel, and we do a good job with that. And changes are seamless all the time, but it's what we're trying to strive to do.
Keep it up. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. All right, Calvin. Thank you.
That was Paul Mangill, the port director.
I was the voice of Thomas.
Here's Tom Keefe, the union representative.
Union president, Yep, National Treasury Employees Union, Chapter 138 here in Champlain. We represent Customs and Border Protection employees from Champlain, Alex Bay to Albany.
Now, you're a local boy. You grew up right here in Champlain, but working here at the border is kind of in your blood, isn't it?
Yes, it was, Calvin. My dad, who passed away in 1982, was a customs inspector, and I proudly followed in his footsteps. So it's a real pleasure to have spent almost 28 years here now. It's been a while.
So that was shortly after your father passed, then?
Yes, it was. I started in the Clinton County Sheriff's Department, and then I came up here in 1984. And I kiddingly say we have what's called now as a Customs and Border Protection Officer. And I say I'm the original one because I started in immigration and then I transferred to Customs. So I actually wore the 2 hats before it was, fashionable to do so. So yeah, it's in my blood.
Now, The union, of course, works closely with the management here because you've got the same task, right?
We do, yeah. Mr. Mongillo and I work very closely together. We understand that a happy employee is a productive employee, so we try to do what we can, to keep the employees focused and on mark, get them the equipment they need, tools to do the job. We don't always agree, but there's more places that we agree than we disagree. This is an excellent example of one. Paul and I both share a passion for this anniversary. It's just something that means a lot to both of us, so it's a perfect fit.
I asked Paul, I have to ask you, where were you?
I was, Calvin, in my office, and ironically, my wife Barbara and I got married 2 months before, and we stayed directly across from the World Trade Center at the Millennium Hilton. And I looked at it every day, and it was the 4th of July, and I was afraid to go out the 4th of July for the very reason of terrorism. I thought this would be a perfect time in New York City. So I knew the area very well. We go to New York a lot, and my wife called me and said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center, and I knew that wasn't good. It's just not a flight path. And at the time, I was dressed like I was now, wearing a suit. I ran home, and it was so surreal. I put my uniform on, and we came up here, and we were here till 3 or 4 in the morning, got a couple hours sleep, and then came right back at it again for it seemed like forever we did that.
Was it really hectic here at the border?
It was. We tried to shut the border down as best we could. It was reactionary. It had to be reactionary. We had kind of a low staff. I mean, we've grown so exponentially since, but we did it. I mean, we stood here and we checked every car coming and going as best we could, because we had at the time, of course, there was rumors running all over the place that these people were trying to flee the country, and we were there, and we did. The men and women, like Paul said, there was 11 of us. I was one of them. There's not many left. It took its toll on us.
You say flee the country, so you're stopping people going north also?
Yes, we have the same statutory authority outbound as we do inbound. So on an event like 9/11, we were checking everything. So.
And I imagine you were coordinating your efforts closely with the counterparts on the other side.
Absolutely, everybody. We had the state police here. We had all kinds of law enforcement coordination. It worked, believe it or not. Like I said, it was a low manpower at times, but we made it work. So it was great.
Yeah.
It was great that we could do it, and it was great that the country finally recognized what we needed here. And you see this facility before you, and lots of people to man it. So.
Yeah, Congressman McHugh and others that worked.
John McHugh was great, now Secretary of the Army. Bill Owens is also a good friend of ours. Chuck Schumer was up here. I remember you covering him up here. Hillary Clinton at the time also. All the politicians were very supportive, yes.
So they reacted.
Yep.
Okay, anything else, Tom?
No, I just want to thank you, Calvin, for being here and covering this event like you always do. You bring history to the North Country, so I appreciate it, and our union appreciates it, and thank you very much.
I appreciate being included in the invitation list, because it's important that we recognize this. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Calvin.
That's Tom Keefe, Champlain fellow. Well, this will conclude our Remembrance Day 2011 event here at the Champlain Port of Entry. As was alluded to, this is a very busy port, one of the main ports on the northern border, a direct route between Montreal and New York City. This has been a September 11th, 10th anniversary memorial service, and I think congratulations go to everyone involved for putting on a very tasteful and memorable event. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable.